We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Crime ravages the country, and yet the progressive policies just keep on coming. Welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides, and we have a great lineup for you today, talking ultra-progressives failing at the ballot box, the Wizard of Oz economy, French and US relations since D-Day, and your rights and your freedoms in our special Talking Liberty segment. I want to take a brief moment to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Brownwood, Texas on KXYL 1240 AM, 102.3 FM. Thanks for being here. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Progressives are taking hit after hit at the ballot box, but what does it all portend? We're lucky enough to be joined by Liberty Nation's senior political analyst and longtime host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner, to dive deep into the consequences of an ultra-progressive Democratic Party. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Thanks, Mark. Delighted to be here.
So first questions first, Tim. Based on the primaries so far that we've had, is the radical left failing to take over the Democratic Party?
I would say the word would be, just as you said, failing, not failed, because there's still a chance that they can come back in the 2024 political cycle. Within the Democratic Party, progressives have lost certainly more than they won in these primaries. Rank and file Democratic voters are very skeptical of the radical solutions proposed by progressives in general. So they've lost more than they've won, but they haven't been fully repudiated within the Democratic Party. But Mark, the question is, what happens when their progressives go up against Republicans in a general election? And generally speaking, as I wrote on LibertyNation.com, the downfall of progressive Democrats could be just around the corner when you consider the disgraced exit of the district attorney in San Francisco, Chesa Boudin, who was thoroughly repudiated. And I think even though that's not a congressional seat, it portends the same thing for Democrats. Rank and file voters, normal Americans, are fed up with soft on crime policies and generally believe we need the opposite.
Yeah, I think that ties in quite nicely with my follow-up on that, because it seems that we can see from the numbers that rank and file Democrats are outperforming generally the ultra-progressives here. But it hasn't stopped lawmakers, specifically Joe Biden, those in the Senate and in the House, with their progressive wish list, which confuses me a little. So surely if voters don't want the candidates who espouse the policies, then they don't want the policies at all, do they?
Well, I don't think that Joe Biden really had the backbone to stand up to his progressive wing. He has adopted many of their most insane positions, such as a total end to fossil fuel, which is what he proposed multiple times during the presidential campaign. The media chose to overlook it once he got into the general election campaign and tried to deny that he had said that. But his Build Back Better plan is a full socialist, democratic socialist takeover of a constitutional republic. So he has adopted the principles that scare the bejesus out of the American people, and the opposite of what got him elected. He got elected because he thought he was a reliable, conventionally liberal Democrat. But as I've said, he was elected like George Bush, but he's governing like FDR, trying to. Yeah. He thinks he has some mandate to overturn. I mean, it's the first time in almost 50 years in his public life, Mark, Joe Biden never once even hinted that America was systemically racist. Then during the campaign, suddenly his third presidential campaign since 1988, he suddenly says we're systemically racist. He's sold out because he has no backbone to stand up to the progressives, and it's going to damage the party deeply it already has.
Yeah, I think people Democrat voters specifically, were quite shocked because, as you point out, during the primaries for the presidential nominee there, Joe Biden was the bulwark against which the progressives were slamming themselves. And this is why he won, because he was holding back that tide of progressive ideology. And then all of a sudden,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, please carry on. All of a sudden, he gets into office and he's trying to deal out their wish list. So he's not governing what he was elected to do, not only by the party faithful, but by the progressives as well.
Joe Biden ran a terrible primary campaign in 2020. He was losing. He was getting his butt handed to him in primary after primary until he was rescued in South Carolina basically by the black voters there who gave him his first victory, his first taste of anything but pure defeat in his quest for the presidency. The only reason he got the nomination was because there was nobody else. Yeah. And they could not put Bernie Sanders forward because he, again, would frighten the American people with his ideas on completely overturning the culture and the economy, the politics, and everything. Biden would have had no chance if there was even a candidate with much of a pulse going against him who wasn't a socialist, but there wasn't. So they cleared the field for him. I mean, they basically ran the other candidates off the Democratic hierarchy to clear the field for Biden. And, he won as not Trump. But that's all he won as. He wasn't Trump, and he represented stability in his...
Allegedly.
Allegedly, and in his inaugural talked about nothing but unity, and since then has advanced nothing but division with all of his statements, his policies that demonize Republicans. That's not unity.
Well, let's jump onto that briefly, Tim, if you may. So Joe Biden, he's been trying to coin the phrase ultra MAGA, which obviously a lot of people in the Make America Great Again movement, that they see this as more of a prize than anything else, especially calling Donald Trump the king of the ultra MAGAs. I mean, it's the worst insult. But I think it's fair to say that the real ultras in this story are those who want and actively work to put criminals back on the streets as quickly as possible. And what I want to know is, how can Democrats really justify making the streets less safe in the name of social justice? Because who is that justice for? It's certainly not the folks who are being beaten, robbed, raped, and even murdered. Your thoughts?
Well, it's hard to believe they couldn't see that before they pursued their soft on crime policies. They're experimenting with the lives of the inner city residents. They're experimenting with a outlying criminal justice theory about trying to empty the jails as much as they can, with the idea that, hey, society shouldn't want to have a lot of people incarcerated. And that's true, but we need to, because there's a lot of criminals. I mean, that's why we have laws to limit people's unbridled behavior and try to prevent it from happening again. And the way to do that is not to let more people get away with it.
And that's a lesson that more progressive DAs might be learning very, very soon, Tim. Tim Donner, thank you ever so much.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
Coming up later in the show, we talk the coming demise of progressive DAs. But up next, why did French and American relations go so badly after D-Day? Don't touch that dial. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.